Have you ever felt like you're the air someone breathes? Always present, always giving, yet unnoticed until you're gone. You've poured your heart and energy into someone who barely acknowledges your presence, and now you're left wondering, do they even care? What would it take for them to truly miss you? The answers may surprise you. In this journey, we'll explore how people begin to recognize what they've lost when your absence forces them to confront their reality. But here's the catch. It's not about revenge or games. This is about Stoicism, finding your inner power, mastering self-respect, and understanding that others cannot dictate your worth. What happens when you finally step back? When you stop chasing and start living for yourself? As we peel back the layers of this truth, you'll see how profoundly your absence can reshape the dynamics of a relationship. Stay with us until the end, because the most powerful realization lies in what they feel when they finally recognize their mistakes. Let's dive in. 1. They relive the past through others' kindness. Absence has a curious way of illuminating what was once taken for granted. When someone begins to receive kindness from others, it triggers memories of you. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how someone's actions remind you of another person, someone you miss deeply? This is what happens to them, and it hits harder than they ever expected. You gave freely your energy, your time, your love, all without demanding anything in return. But now they encounter others who offer gestures of kindness, and it's simply not the same. The depth of your care was unmatched, and no one else can replicate it. The realization creeps in slowly. These fleeting moments of kindness remind them of what they once had with you. Do they smile? Do they feel gratitude? Or do they feel a pang of regret, knowing that the authenticity you brought to their life is now out of reach? Here's the truth about Stoicism. It teaches us to accept that people may not see the value of something until it's gone. It's not your job to prove your worth. Your actions and character already speak for themselves. But when others mirror small pieces of the love and effort you once gave, it becomes a stark reminder of just how much they lost. They start to wonder, why didn't I appreciate that before? Why didn't I hold on to it? But their reflections come too late. Now consider this. How many times have you tried to recreate something you've lost? A friendship, a partnership, even a moment. The harder you try, the more you realize that what's gone cannot be replicated. This is what they experience now. They see glimpses of you in others, but the full picture is forever out of reach. And what about you? You're no longer trapped in the cycle of giving without reciprocation. You've stepped into your own light, giving your kindness to those who truly value it. They may be reliving the past, but you're building a future, one where your worth isn't defined by someone else's recognition. Do you feel a sense of peace knowing that your absence can teach someone a lesson they couldn't learn when you were present? That's the essence of Stoicism, knowing that you can't control how others perceive your worth, but finding power in how you respond. As they grapple with these memories, a new struggle begins. They start comparing everyone to you, and no one measures up. Let's explore this next. 2. They start comparing everyone to you. When your absence settles in, something fascinating begins to happen. They start looking for you in everyone they meet. They might not admit it, but deep down, they're searching for the connection, care, and depth you once brought into their life. The irony is that the more they look, the more they realize just how irreplaceable you are. No one else measures up. Why does this happen? Because you didn't just offer surface-level affection or fleeting moments of joy. You offered authenticity. You were the steady presence, the anchor they didn't know they needed. But now, every new interaction they have feels hollow. Maybe the conversations don't flow the same way, or the other person doesn't understand them like you did. Have you ever compared a generic song to a heartfelt melody that lingers in your soul? That's what it feels like for them now. Everyone else feels like the background noise, while you were the symphony. They find themselves asking, why doesn't this feel right? Why doesn't this person make me feel the way they did? This is the power of your absence, and Stoicism reminds us to embrace this truth. People often learn the value of what they've lost only after it's gone. You don't have to argue, beg, or plead for them to see your worth. By stepping back, you let their own experiences reveal what they missed. What happens when they start comparing? They feel an emptiness they can't quite explain. They realize that while someone else might be kind, they lack the depth you brought. Someone else might be funny, but they lack your understanding. Each person they meet becomes a reflection of what you once provided, and with every comparison, they feel the growing void. But here's the most important question. Does it matter to you anymore? It shouldn't. You've already moved forward, focusing on your own growth. This is the essence of Stoicism, living in the present, valuing yourself, and not dwelling on what others think or do. Now, let's pause for a moment of reflection. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's absence made you realize their value? If so, you understand how powerful this experience can be. Imagine the impact your absence is having now. Let them compare. Let them wonder. But you're thriving. If this resonates with you, take a moment to engage with this message. Hit the like button to let us know you're on the path to self-respect and growth. And tell us in the comments, have you ever noticed someone comparing others to you? And what did it make you realize about your own worth? Your stories inspire others on the same journey. Up next, we'll uncover the sharp sting of loneliness they begin to feel as your absence creates a void they can't ignore. Stay with us because the next revelation might surprise you. 3. They feel the sharp sting of loneliness. Loneliness is an emotion most people try to avoid, but it has a way of creeping in when someone significant is no longer present. When you pull back, when you stop giving your time, your energy, and your attention, they are left to sit with themselves. And in that quiet, the sharp sting of loneliness makes its presence known. At first, they might brush it off. Maybe they fill their days with distractions, friends, hobbies, or even scrolling endlessly on their phones. But these are fleeting escapes. The silence always returns, louder than before. Why? Because you didn't just fill their time, you brought meaning to it. And without you, that meaning is harder to find. Loneliness isn't just about the absence of people. It's about the absence of connection, of feeling understood. You were the one who listened, who showed up, who cared without conditions. When they feel that void, it's not about needing a warm body nearby. It's about missing the specific warmth you brought into their life. This is where Stoicism offers a profound perspective. You see, loneliness doesn't have to be feared. It's a teacher. For them, it teaches what they had and what they lost. For you, it teaches the value of standing strong in your own presence, knowing you don't need external validation to feel complete. They, however, are now on the receiving end of this lesson, and it's not an easy one. Imagine the quiet moments they used to share with you. The casual text exchanges, the deep conversations, the way you could fill the space with your presence without needing to do much at all. Now those moments feel stark, empty, and uncomfortably quiet. The more they try to ignore it, the more persistent it becomes. Every empty space in their life serves as a reminder. You're no longer there. Here's the part they likely never saw coming. Loneliness forces them to confront themselves. It's no longer about what you gave them, it's about what they lack within themselves. You provided a sense of stability, a buffer against the darker corners of their thoughts. Without you, they're left exposed. They feel the sting, not just of missing you, but of realizing how much they depended on your presence to feel whole. And you've moved forward. You've stepped away from a relationship dynamic where you were giving endlessly while receiving little in return. Now you're building connections and moments that are reciprocal and fulfilling. Their loneliness isn't yours to fix anymore, it's theirs to face. As the silence grows louder in their life, they start to notice the cracks in their routine, the emptiness in their days. What happens next? Their daily patterns begin to crumble, forcing them to confront just how much your presence shaped their world. Let's explore this next. 4. Their daily routines start falling apart. Life thrives on routine, on the steady patterns that keep our days predictable and manageable. But when you step back, when your presence, energy, and contributions are no longer part of their life, those routines start to unravel. They might not notice it at first. They might tell themselves everything is fine. But eventually they realize something is off, and that realization is unsettling. When you were there, you were part of the rhythm of their days. Maybe it was the simple things. A morning text, a call to check in, or just your willingness to listen when their day didn't go as planned. It's easy to take those moments for granted when they're consistent, like background music that fades into the atmosphere. But when the music stops, the silence becomes deafening. Now they're navigating their day without the steady reassurance of your presence. It starts small. Perhaps they reach for their phone, instinctively thinking to share a moment with you, only to remember you're not there. Maybe they go through an accomplishment or a setback and feel the absence of the one person who would have cared enough to ask about it. Over time, these small disruptions pile up. They realize their routine wasn't just built around their own needs, it was intertwined with you. Without you, their day begins to feel unmoored. The spaces where you used to exist, the calls, The conversations, the moments of shared connection, now feel like gaps they can't fill. Here's where the real impact begins to sink in. As they go about their day, they try to substitute those moments with something else, someone else. But it doesn't work. A chat with a friend or a quick distraction might help in the moment, but it doesn't bring the sense of ease and completeness that your presence once provided. The rhythm of their life falters, and they can't ignore the fact that things just aren't the same. This is the power of stepping back. You've removed your energy from a dynamic where it was likely taken for granted. You've reclaimed the time and effort you once gave so freely, and in doing so you've created a void. Stoicism teaches us that this void isn't meant to harm or punish. It's simply the natural result of withdrawing from something unsustainable. For them, this void is now a mirror reflecting just how much your presence contributed to their sense of stability. And you've replaced those moments with routines of your own, ones that nurture your growth and reflect your self-worth. Your days aren't defined by the need to maintain someone else's balance. Instead, you've created patterns that bring you peace and fulfillment. Meanwhile, they're left grappling with the cracks in their daily life. The rituals they once relied on are now incomplete, and the structure they thought was theirs alone turns out to have been supported by you all along. What happens when the foundation crumbles? They start to feel the emotional weight of your absence even more deeply, and that's where we're headed next. 5. They struggle with emotional turmoil. When someone who was once a steady presence in their life steps away, the emotional ripple effect is inevitable. At first, they might try to act unfazed, even convincing themselves they're fine without you. But over time, the emotional weight of your absence becomes impossible to ignore. Regret, guilt, and confusion begin to swirl within them, creating a storm they can't escape. Why does this happen? Because emotions like unresolved debts have a way of catching up when least expected. While you were there, they leaned on you, maybe more than they realized. You were the emotional anchor that kept them steady. When you pulled away, they were left adrift, forced to confront feelings they had buried under the comfort of your presence. Now they replay old conversations, moments they dismissed, or times they brushed you aside. Was I too harsh? They wonder. Did I take them for granted? These questions gnaw at them, and with each passing day, the answers feel heavier. Emotional turmoil isn't just about missing someone, it's about facing the truth of their own actions and realizing the consequences. Stoicism reminds us that we cannot control the emotions of others, only our own responses. This turmoil they're feeling, it's not for you to fix. You've already done your part. You gave your energy, your care, and your time, and now they must sit with the consequences of their choices. This is their emotional storm to weather, not yours. For them, every quiet moment becomes a battlefield. Their mind becomes a relentless loop of what-ifs and if-onlys. They might try to distract themselves with work, social outings, or even new connections, but the turmoil follows them like a shadow. Why? Because your absence isn't just felt, it's teaching them a lesson. They're beginning to understand that emotional security isn't something to be taken for granted. Meanwhile, you found peace. You're no longer entangled in their emotional struggles, no longer drained by their inability to see your worth. Instead, you've channeled that energy into yourself, your growth, your well-being, your future. Have you ever felt the freedom that comes from letting go of someone else's chaos? That's the power of choosing yourself. It's not easy, but it's transformative. And as they wrestle with their inner conflict, you're thriving in the clarity and calm you've reclaimed. If this resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on how far you've come. Share your thoughts in the comments. What have you learned about yourself by stepping away from someone who didn't value you? And if you're on this journey now, let us know how you're finding strength. Don't forget to like this video to remind yourself and others that choosing peace over chaos is always worth it. Coming up next, we'll explore the social struggles they face as your absence begins to reshape their interactions. Stay with us. This revelation will open your eyes to just how much your presence impacted their world. 6. They face social events all alone. Social events, those moments of shared laughter, connections, and camaraderie, can feel like celebrations of life. But when someone who was a constant companion suddenly isn't there, these gatherings take on a different tone. What was once a source of enjoyment now becomes a glaring reminder of absence. For them, this realization begins to hit harder with every event they attend without you by their side. At first, they might enter these spaces with confidence, trying to mask the void left by your absence. They engage in small talk, flash polite smiles, and act as though nothing has changed. But deep down, they feel the weight of every interaction. Without you, the social dynamic is different, less natural, less complete. You were the one who made these settings feel comfortable, grounding them in moments that might otherwise have felt awkward or overwhelming. Now they find themselves stumbling through conversations that once came easily. Why? Because your presence provided something intangible but powerful, a sense of belonging. You filled the gaps in their social armor, offering support when they faltered, making introductions when they felt out of place, and elevating the energy of the room just by being there. Without you, the effort required to navigate these spaces feels immense. And it's not just their internal experience that shifts, it's also how others perceive your absence. Mutual friends or acquaintances may ask, "Where's so-and-so?" or comment on how the two of you used to attend these events together. Every question, every passing remark digs deeper into the growing void. They might shrug it off, offering a vague response, but internally, it stings. The absence isn't just personal, it's public. Stoicism teaches us that our value isn't diminished by the absence of recognition from others. But for them, these social moments become mirrors, reflecting back what they've lost. They begin to notice how the energy of the room feels different without you. They remember the way you effortlessly connected with people, how you made them feel confident simply by standing beside them. Those memories, once comforting, now feel bittersweet. Imagine how the conversations play out in their mind afterward. They think back to the moments when they stumbled over their words or felt out of place, moments that wouldn't have happened if you were there. They start to realize how much they depended on your social presence, not just for support, but for the warmth and connection you brought to every interaction. It's a subtle, creeping awareness that grows with each event. Meanwhile, you're thriving in your own social spaces. You've moved on to gatherings where your energy is reciprocated and valued, where the connections you build are meaningful and fulfilling. You're no longer the one carrying someone else's emotional and social weight. You've stepped into a space where your presence is appreciated, not taken for granted. For them, every party, every gathering, every casual outing becomes a quiet struggle. They face the awkwardness, the questions, the subtle yet unmistakable sense that something or someone is missing. The absence is undeniable, and the more they try to fill it with surface-level distractions, the more obvious it becomes that what they lost was far greater than they realized. And as they grapple with the discomfort of facing these social settings alone, a new challenge emerges. Hearing about your achievements. That's where we're headed next, and the impact is undeniable. 7. They hear about your achievements. There's a certain sting that comes with hearing about the success of someone you once took for granted. For them, this sting becomes sharper with every whisper of your achievements, every casual mention of how well you're doing without them. At first, they may dismiss it, brushing off the news as if it doesn't matter. But over time, your growth becomes a mirror reflecting their own stagnation. And that's a reality they can't ignore. Imagine the scenarios. A mutual friend mentions your promotion, a new venture, or even just how happy and confident seem lately. Maybe they see it on social media, a picture of you traveling, celebrating, or simply glowing with the peace you found. Each piece of information lands like a drop of water in a still pond, sending ripples through their consciousness. They start to ask themselves questions they didn't before. Were they always this capable? Did I hold them back? How did I not see this? The brilliance of your achievements doesn't just make them notice you, it makes them notice themselves. They begin to reflect on the choices that led to this moment. And the hardest part, realizing that while you've been moving forward, they've been standing still, caught in the cycle of regret and what-ifs. They see your success as a timeline of what they could have been a part of, had they valued you when they had the chance. What's fascinating is how Stoicism plays into this dynamic. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control. Our actions, our growth, our inner peace. Your achievements are a testament to this philosophy in action. You've redirected your energy away from seeking validation and poured it into building a life that reflects your worth. While they're stuck looking back, you're looking ahead, setting and surpassing goals, and becoming someone they never imagined you could be. Hearing about your accomplishments also forces them to confront a truth they've avoided. You're thriving without them. This realization isn't just humbling, it's a revelation. They thought you'd remain where they left you, waiting for their acknowledgement, hoping for their attention. Instead, you've shattered their assumptions, proving that your happiness and success were never dependent on their presence. But here's where it gets even more powerful. It's not just the big milestones that impact them, it's the small wins too. Every time they hear about you doing well, it chips away at the narrative they've built to protect themselves, that they didn't need you, that your absence wouldn't affect them. The truth is undeniable now. You were a force in their life, and that force hasn't diminished, it's only grown stronger in your independence. Have you ever noticed how people respond when they see someone they undervalued succeed? They try to downplay it, rationalize it, or even convince themselves it doesn't matter. But deep down they know. They know they missed out. They know they misjudged. And for them, hearing about your achievements becomes an inescapable reminder of what they've lost. If this resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on how far you've come. Share your story in the comments. What have you achieved since stepping away from a relationship or dynamic where your worth wasn't recognized? Your experiences could inspire someone who's still finding their footing. And if you're in the middle of your journey, like this video to affirm that you're on the path to growth and greatness. Up next, we'll dive into the final and most profound moment, when they finally recognize their mistakes. Stay with us because this is where everything comes full circle. 8. They finally recognize their mistakes. Recognition of mistakes is one of life's hardest realizations. For them, this moment doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds slowly, like a tide rising with each passing day. At first, they might feel an uneasiness they can't quite place. They sense something is missing, but they convince themselves it will pass. Yet as time stretches on, the clarity becomes inescapable. They've made mistakes, and those mistakes cost them someone irreplaceable. This recognition begins in fragments. They think back to moments they dismissed your efforts, the times they failed to acknowledge your care and attention. At the time, they likely thought nothing of it. Perhaps they assumed you'd always be there, that your giving nature was endless. But now, those small oversights loom large, casting long shadows over their reflections. The realization feels sharp and heavy. They had something extraordinary, and they let it slip through their fingers. Think about how this plays out in their mind. They replay conversations where they could have been kinder or more understanding. They revisit moments where they should have been present but chose not to be. Every memory becomes a vivid reminder of the opportunities they squandered to show you they cared. The weight of these realizations isn't just regret. It's regret compounded by the knowledge that they can't undo what's been done. In this moment of reckoning, they're forced to confront the stories they've told themselves to avoid responsibility. Maybe they convinced themselves that your absence wouldn't matter, that their life would carry on just fine without you. But now those narratives crumble under the weight of evidence. They see how your absence has reshaped their world, leaving a void that no distraction or replacement can fill. This is the essence of Stoicism, understanding that every action or inaction has consequences. While Stoicism encourages us to accept what is beyond our control, it also urges us to take responsibility for what is within our power. For them, this realization strikes deeply. They had the power to nurture and appreciate the connection you shared, but instead they let complacency and neglect dictate their actions. As they come to terms with their mistakes, they face a difficult question. What now? Can they make amends? Can they rebuild the bridge they burned? The harsh truth is, by the time they fully recognize their errors, you've likely moved on. You've grown beyond the need for their validation, embracing a life where your value is recognized and celebrated by those who truly deserve your presence. And yet, Stoicism reminds us that this is not about revenge or gloating. Their mistakes are theirs to own, and your growth is yours to celebrate. This journey has been about reclaiming your power, not about their regret. You've chosen to focus on what you can control, yourself, your actions, your happiness. And in doing so, you've risen above the circumstances that once held you back. For them, the path forward is uncertain, marked by the echoes of what could have been. They see now with painful clarity that their choices led to this moment. They recognize that you weren't just someone who passed through their life. You were a rare and meaningful connection. And in losing you, they lost a part of themselves. As they sit with this realization, you're no longer tethered to their story. Your journey continues, marked by growth, strength, and the unshakable peace that comes from knowing your worth. Their recognition of their mistakes may be profound, but it's your progress that truly defines the outcome. This final chapter doesn't mark the end of their reflection. It's just the beginning of a lesson they'll carry with them, a lesson born from your absence and from the powerful life you've built in its place. You've now seen how absence transforms the dynamics of any relationship. It forces people to face the void left behind, to reflect on what they took for granted, and to grapple with emotions they never prepared for. More importantly, you've witnessed how your decision to step back, to value yourself over seeking validation, creates a ripple effect that not only reshapes their life but redefines yours. This journey isn't about making someone miss you. It's about embracing the core principles of Stoicism: detachment, self-respect, and focusing on what you can control. By withdrawing from relationships where you weren't valued, you've reclaimed your energy, your time, and your peace. You've allowed them to face the consequences of their actions, and in doing so, you've freed yourself to grow. For them, the realization of their mistakes comes slowly, painfully, and often too late. They've learned the hard way that connections like yours are rare, that your presence wasn't just comforting, it was transformative. And while they're stuck in the cycle of reflection and regret, you're thriving in a life built on self-awareness, strength, and purpose. So where do we go from here? This isn't the end of your story, it's a new beginning. A chapter where you stand firmly in your worth, surrounded by people and opportunities that celebrate who you are. Their absence in your life no longer defines you. Instead, your independence and growth define the life you're creating. If this journey resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Have you stepped away from a situation where you weren't valued? What did you learn about yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who's still finding their strength. And if you're on this path right now, hit the like button to affirm your commitment to growth and resilience. Remember, Stoicism teaches us to accept what is and to focus on becoming better versions of ourselves, not for anyone else, but for the peace it brings to our own lives. If this message spoke to you, consider subscribing to this channel. Together, we'll continue exploring the wisdom of self-respect, the power of detachment, and the profound impact of living authentically. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Keep standing strong, keep moving forward, and remember, you are enough, exactly as you are. Until next time, take care and continue thriving.